Wang Ho mocked Imom's defense, then his cavalry shattered against it. Half-cost walls turned the orphan into an unbeatable fortress lord. Imom began alone, poor, and threatened by a rich bully. Wang Ho promised to flatten his territory for refusing submission. Impregnable Fortress halved every defensive cost and construction time. Each mansion upgrades strengthened every tower, wall, and firing range. 3 arrow towers erased the first monster tide in minutes. Imom ranked above Wang Ho without losing a single defender. Only hours earlier, a high-dimensional will had transported billions of humans onto a vast continent as newborn lords. Imom opened his eyes on grassland with 1 crude mansion and frightened peasants, and a single recruitment order. The Lord system explained that survival depended on territory growth, troop recruitment, and keeping the mansion from destruction. If the mansion fell, its lord vanished with it, making every weak wall a direct threat to human life. A golden wheel then selected Imom's exclusive talent from grades ranging between E and S. The light stopped on grade A, and the words Impregnable Fortress burned across his vision. Most students wanted dragons, berserk charges, or explosive attack skills. Yet Imom immediately understood what he had received. Inside his borders, defensive structures required half the wood, half the stone, and only half the normal working hours. Advanced fortifications also unlocked more easily, while every mansion level strengthened every existing defensive structure automatically. For a cautious orphan who always prepared for disaster, the talent fit better than any legendary sword. Imom recruited 8 Tier 1 militia, armed them with crude spears, and divided them into patrol teams. The 10 peasants began cutting trees and collecting stone with primitive tools, making every gathered resource painfully valuable. While they worked, Imom opened the regional channel and discovered many familiar names from Guang City. The loudest belonged to Wang Ho, a wealthy school bully who had drawn the grade A berserk charge talent. His starting order had also produced 5 Tier 3 wolf cavalry, an overwhelming advantage during the earliest stage. Wang Ho immediately founded the Heavenly Wolf Alliance and demanded every nearby lord submit to his command. Anyone who joined would receive protection, while anyone refusing would be treated as an enemy and eventually destroyed. Students who once followed his money rushed to flatter him, praising his cavalry before seeing a single real battle. Wang Ho noticed Imom's silence and publicly demanded that the quiet top student kneel like everyone else. His lackeys mocked Imom as a useless orphan who had studied too much and understood nothing about survival. Imom answered with one calm statement, declaring that every lord would rise according to personal ability. The message carried no insult. Yet Wang Ho heard open rebellion and promised to teach Imom the meaning of death. Imom closed the channel, knowing distance might delay the attack, but would never erase the danger. His peasants had gathered enough materials to reveal the true value of Impregnable Fortress immediately. A normal wooden arrow tower required 400 wood, 200 stone, and 8 hours of labor. Imom's version required only 200 wood, 100 stone, and 4 hours. Where another lord could build 1 tower, Imom could raise 2 with identical resources and identical time. He ordered construction at once, planning the first tower behind the mansion where it could cover the central approach. Even that advantage depended on production, and the peasants were still swinging stone axes against thick trees. Before he solved the tool shortage, a militia scout reported 6 goblins guarding a chest 1 kilometer east. Imom gathered all 8 militia and led them toward the grove, refusing to waste a possible early resource cache. The goblins were Tier 1 creatures with weaker attributes than his militia, but carelessness could still create casualties. He split his force into 2 wings and struck from both sides before the monsters could form a line. The militia lacked skill, yet Imom's commands kept their spears coordinated and prevented the goblins from surrounding anyone. Within 3 minutes, all 6 goblins were dead and only 1 soldier carried a minor arm wound. 1 militia leveled from the battle, proving that soldiers could grow through combat instead of remaining disposable forever. The chest contained 1,000 wood, 500 stone, 50 iron ore, and a logging axe blueprint. Each axe increased a peasant's wood gathering speed by 1/3, exactly solving Imom's newest problem. He crafted 10 axes, armed every worker, and watched the resource counter rise much faster than before. With the sudden surplus, he ordered 2 additional arrow towers on the western and southern sides. 3 defensive points began rising around the mansion, creating overlapping fire instead of a single vulnerable direction. Then the system announced the first crimson moon would begin at midnight. During the 7-day protection period, every wild creature would become frenzied, and monster tides would attack each lord's mansion from random directions. Survivors would earn rewards, while failed territories would be completely erased without any second chance. Panic swallowed the regional channel as lords with 1 weak unit realized no distant ally could physically save them. Wang Ho hid his concern behind arrogance, claiming his wolf cavalry would crush any minor monster wave. He singled out Imom again, joking that monsters would chew through the orphan before morning. Imom ignored him and checked his defenses, finding towers nearly finished but darkness still dangerously uncontrolled. A wooden wall normally cost 20 wood per meter and required 10 minutes for each meter. His talent reduced that to 10 wood in 5 minutes, allowing a protective ring before midnight. Arrow towers could kill distant enemies, but without illumination, they might waste shots against shapes hidden in darkness. The construction panel revealed an illumination lighthouse requiring wood, stone, and one rare white crystal. Imom owned no crystal, so he offered for 100 wood and 200 stone through the regional market. The enormous offer stunned everyone, because most lords could barely gather enough wood for one damaged fence. A quiet classmate named Sumu privately contacted him after receiving a white crystal from her daily lucky blessing. The system trading platform exchanged their resources instantly, letting Sumu build an arrow tower while Imom secured light. His talent halved the lighthouse materials and working time, turning an 8-hour structure into a 4-hour project. Before midnight, 3 arrow towers, 1 lighthouse, and a crude wooden wall surrounded the mansion. 8 militia waited behind firing gaps, while 10 peasants sheltered inside the central building. Imom climbed onto the roof, where he could direct every defense within the lighthouse's 200-meter glow. The crimson moon rose blood red, and approximately 35 frenzied goblins rushed from the eastern darkness. Their pain response had vanished, making them fearless attackers who would continue moving through wounds. The eastern tower fired first and drove an arrow through the lead goblin's eye, killing it instantly. All 3 towers joined, harvesting the charging lion while the lighthouse denied the monsters every shadow. Survivors reached the wall and hammered weak clubs against it, barely lowering the durability bar. Militia thrust spears through the gaps, finishing climbers without exposing themselves to direct counterattacks. The entire wave collapsed in under 4 minutes, leaving Imom's territory untouched and his soldiers barely tired. 5 militia reached level 2, gaining attributes while Wang Ho's cavalry suffered injuries in their own melee defense. A continent-wide leaderboard appeared, ranking lords according to monster clearance speed and defensive performance. Imom stood in first place, almost 1 minute ahead of Wang Ho and his supposedly unbeatable Tier 3 riders. The regional channel went silent before erupting with accusations that the quiet orphan must have cheated. Wang Ho demanded an explanation, unable to accept that wooden structures had beaten his elite cavalry. Imom gave him none, because the system's first-place reward mattered far more than a wounded bully's pride. He received a blue resource chest, a random building blueprint chest, and a green hero recruitment edict. The resource chest delivered 3,000 wood, 1,500 stone, iron ore, and 200 gold coins. The blueprint unlocked farmhouses, each producing 5 new peasants and expanding his gathering workforce. The green edict summoned Snow Song, an apprentice shaman with high spirit, ice magic, and wolf-related talent. Her wild wolf skill could summon 1 scout each day, while Ice Thorn dealt damage and slowed targets. Snow Song's wolf was weak in direct combat, but its speed and senses made it perfect for exploration. Imom immediately built farmhouses, expanded his workforce, and ordered Snow Song to scout beyond the walls. The first Crimson Moon had proven his talent, yet the map beyond the lighthouse remained completely unknown. By dawn, nearly 1/5 of the regional lords had disappeared, revealing how brutally the game punished weak preparation. Wang Ho returned to boasting, pretending the leaderboard loss meant nothing while secretly focusing even harder on Imom. Imom answered by building more workers, more walls, more traps, and a defense designed to improve every day. 5 farmhouses completed overnight, increasing the population to 35 peasants and accelerating every construction schedule. Imom assigned 15 workers to stone, 20 to wood, and ordered a full wall around the growing territory. He also spent iron on 100 hunting traps, layering them outside the barriers and beneath tower blind spots. Snow Song led 3 militia and her wolf east, mapping water, monster camps, resource points, and neighboring territories. About 10 kilometers away, she found another mansion marked by a white flag carrying a crude smiling face. The discovery shattered Imom's assumption that lords were separated by impossible distances. Across the continent, 10 kilometers was close enough for fast cavalry to launch a raid in less than half an hour. The Newbie region was not a peaceful training ground but a crowded arena designed to force conflict. On the 3rd morning, Imom began upgrading the mansion to level 2 with gathered resources and gold. Construction would last 12 hours, temporarily preventing other mansion-linked upgrades from beginning. Rather than wait, he took Snow Song, 5 militia, and wolves west to hunt for food. A tier-to-tusked boar charged from the forest, strong enough to pierce crude leather armor immediately. Snow Song slowed its front leg with Ice Thorn, breaking the charge before it reached full power. The militia attacked its belly and flanks, but one soldier was thrown aside and badly wounded. A second Ice Thorn lined in the bore, letting wolves hold its legs while spears pierced its neck. The kill produced enough meat to feed the territory for days, along with hide and valuable tusks. That night, workers and soldiers celebrated around roasted pork while nearby lords begged desperately for food. When the mansion reached level 2, its fragile shack transformed into a stronger wooden residence with expanded options. Among the new structures was a refugee camp that refreshed random Tier 1 units every week. Imom built it immediately, desperate for soldiers who could protect the territory without risking his original militia. The first refresh offered 12 skeletons with terrible health, weak attributes, and absolutely unbreakable morale. They required no food, no sleep, and ignored charm or fear, making them ideal expendable defenders. Buying all 12 nearly emptied Imom's gold. Yet Wang Ho's Tier 3 cavalry made extra bodies necessary. Black mist poured from the refugee camp as armed skeletons emerged and knelt before their new lord. The peasants panicked at first, until Imom explained the undead would patrol every night and protect their sleep. He banned infighting, assigned skeleton pairs around the perimeter, and turned fear into cautious acceptance. While workers built logging camps, quarries, farmland, and more housing, Snow Song scouted the northern region. A skeleton patrol suddenly reported centaur figures watching from the eastern woods. Near the Smiling Flag territory, Imom sounded the alarm, moved civilians into the mansion, and brought for skeletons to meet the approaching lord. The stranger introduced himself as Gang Jin, a high-ranked lord commanding 9-tiered centaur spearmen. Gang Jin proposed to find borders, trade, and possible cooperation, arguing that fighting each other only benefited Wang Ho. He had already identified Imom as the first-place defender after seeing 3 towers and thick surrounding walls. Imom respected his caution but refused complete trust, choosing a creek midway between territories as their boundary. They agreed to avoid crossing without permission and to discuss deeper cooperation only when mutual interest appeared. Soon afterward, Wang Ho publicly confirmed most lords had neighbors roughly 10 kilometers away in every direction. His announcement strengthened the Heavenly Wolf Alliance's appeal, because isolated survivors now feared nearby raids. Imom saw the opposite lesson, understanding that compact spacing made powerful defensive hubs and controlled resource points essential. After 1 week, 7 arrow towers, double barriers, hundreds of traps, and 6 summoned wolves protected his home. His army included militia, skeletons, and Snow Song, still weaker in quality than Wang Ho's growing cavalry. Imom therefore began clearing neutral camps, hoping to convert safe victories into materials and strategic territory. Fire slimes fell easily beneath skeleton pressure, militia flanking, wolf harassment, and Snow Song's ice magic. The rewards were small, but the formation trained his mixed troops to fight as a coordinated unit. Farther south, they discovered a white crystal mine guarded by goblins and a tiered warrior. A direct assault could win, but would destroy expensive skeletons. So Imom designed a safer pocket trap. To wolves provoked small goblin groups and led them into concealed skeletons, waiting among dense trees. Militia struck from both sides while Snow Song fired from high ground, eliminating each group separately. The goblins eventually stopped chasing and formed around their warrior, forcing Imom to choose between retreat and sacrifice. He ordered skeletons to break the formation, accepting the loss of fragile troops to create one decisive opening. The first skeleton shattered on impact, but the breach allowed wolves and militia to surround the slowed leader. Snow Song froze its leg, a thrown spear pierced its back, and the remaining goblins lost all courage. Imom lost to skeletons and 1 wolf, yet gained control of the white crystal mine. The system rewarded his first captured mine with a miner hut blueprint and permission to fortify resource points. 15 specialized miners could produce 3 white crystals daily, supplying advanced magical structures across his territory. Imom immediately planned a satellite fortress with miner huts, walls, traps, and arrow towers at the cave entrance. 20 peasants arrived with materials. An impregnable fortress halved every defensive cost at the new outpost. The mine became more than production, serving as the first node in a future network of connected strongholds. West of the crystal mine, Imom found an iron deposit guarded by approximately 30 cave dwellers. Those creatures navigated through sound and smell, making ordinary wolf bait tactics ineffective and dangerous. With insufficient gold to replace casualties, Imom withdrew rather than force a battle he could not control. That same night, the system announced a second crimson moon with a much stronger monster tide. Imom examined 7 towers, wooden walls, traps, and scattered troops, then decided the defenses remained nowhere near sufficient. He ordered 8 additional arrow towers, bringing the total to 15 with overlapping range from every angle. Fresh white crystals powered multiple lighthouses, illuminating the entire defense zone like midday beneath the red moon. The second tide attacked from all directions with nearly 100 goblins and 12 tier 2 thugs. Hunting traps crippled the smaller monsters, while 15 towers erased entire sections of the approaching horde. The thugs pushed through arrows and smashed the outer palisade, each heavy strike threatening major durability loss. Imom ordered skeletons forward as expendable blockers while militia attacked safely through prepared wall openings. Snow Song stopped conserving mana and repeatedly froze any thug approaching the central barrier. The battle lasted 10 brutal minutes, killing 6 skeletons and 2 wolves while damaging several structures. Imom still survived with no civilian deaths, proving layered fortifications could stop enemies far stronger than individual soldiers. Wang Ho plays first this time after expanding to 15 wolf cavalry, while Imom dropped to third. Instead of celebrating survival, the bully announced an evil wolf camp and an outdoor gold mine. His cavalry could now replenish continuously, turning an early advantage into a growing military machine. Third place rewards gave Imom resources, gold, 7 tier to lizardman archers, and another random blueprint. The archers filled his mobile ranged weakness, providing accurate shots without depending entirely on Snow Song's limited mana. The blueprint unlocked a mushroom house capable of recruiting the same cave dwellers, guarding the western iron mine. Imom gathered rat and clay from a swamp and built the strange structure inside his territory. Along the way, his archers destroyed slow mud slimes without allowing them to cross the firing distance. The mushroom house refreshed 10 cave dwellers, but his limited gold could purchase only 8. Imom recruited them anyway, because shared language might secure the iron mine without a costly assault. He assembled an intimidating force and marched openly toward the cave, making surrender safer than resistance. The recruited cave dwellers carried his terms forward, while the system evaluated the wild tribe's willingness. To Imom's surprise, their initial attitude was friendly, and the surrender judgment succeeded immediately. Chief Stonehammer led 33 cave dwellers and 3 tier to hell cavemen out of the mine. Their loyalty became permanently fixed after joining voluntarily, eliminating the risk of future betrayal. Imom accepted their allegiance, occupied the iron mine, and unlocked a furnace blueprint for processing ore. The peaceful victory more than doubled his ground army while preserving every soldier and worker. He stationed cave dwellers at both mines, raised defensive outposts, and began receiving steady iron and crystal supplies. With stronger numbers, Imom cleared nearby monster camps that had once been too dangerous to approach. Wild boars and goblins collapsed beneath shield formations, wolf harassment, and lizardman arrows. In a swamp, a tier to water accumulation slime unexpectedly offered surrender before the battle began. 14 smaller water droplet slimes followed it, becoming high health living shields for Imom's army. The larger slime possessed healing and splitting abilities, meaning it could eventually produce additional slimes near water. Imom named it 3 Waters and built upon, gaining a free source of future defensive troops. His talent strengthened buildings, but careful recruitment was now giving those buildings a mobile protective army. The refugee camps next were fresh offered butterfly sprites, flying units so fragile that one direct hit could kill them. Imom could afford only one, yet he purchased it because aerial scouting created options no ground soldier could replace. The tiny sprite became Little Gold, an apparent mascot whose strategic value remained hidden from everyone watching. Gang Jin soon returned with a proposal involving a nearby gold mine occupied by disciplined dwarves. The defenders included tier 2 warriors, dangerous musketeers, and Ironbird, a level 10 tier 3 dwarf chieftain. Gang Jin offered half the mine's output and promised to fund every mining structure if Imom joined the assault. Imom accepted under one condition. Each commander would control his own troops and divide all spoils equally. At sunrise, their combined armies gathered near the creek, creating the region's strongest independent strike force. Gang Jin fielded centaur spearmen, centaur archers, halfling slingers, white-scaled snakes, and a mounted hero named Nasong. Imom brought cave dwellers, hell cavemen, militia, wolves, slimes, lizardman archers, and Snow Song. The gold mine stood behind a stone and timber fortress, protected by barricades and one narrow entrance. 10 wharf gunners could devastate any frontal charge before melee troops reached the gate. Gang Jin's previous probes had failed because Ironbird's defenders refused every lure and never abandoned their fortress. Imom studied the battlefield and realized the muskets, not the walls, formed the most dangerous defensive layer. Gunpowder depended on remaining dry, and 3 Waters could produce sticky moisture mixed with rat and swamp clay. Imom needed slime mucus and clay into foul black pellets, then tested Little Gold's ability to fly unseen. The sprite dropped one pellet into Ironbird's wine cup from high above the watchtower. Ironbird swallowed the contaminated drink, spat it across his beard, and roared at enemies he could not find. Gang Jin finally understood that the weakest unit on the field could sabotage weapons. Before the battle started, after darkness fell, Little Gold carried pellet after pellet over the fortress walls. Each payload burst across a powder bag, sealing moisture into the gunpowder while sleepy guards noticed nothing. By dawn, all 10 musketeer supplies had become useless wet sludge without losing a single allied soldier. Imom and Gang Jin launched their assault as the dwarves discovered every proud firearm had failed. Slimes advanced first, absorbing thrown stones and axes while ranged troops suppressed defenders on the parapets. Centaur spearmen attacked hinges with precision, while cave dwellers hammered the gate through pure force. The entrance collapsed, turning the narrow breach into brutal close combat between dwarves and allied troops. Snow Song froze clustered defenders, wolves and snakes attacked ankles, and archers punished every exposed target. Then Ironbird leaped from the watchtower with a giant hammer, shaking the ground and scattering the front line. One sweeping strike erased cave dwellers instantly, revealing the terrifying gap between Tier 2 troops and a Tier 3 boss. Nason led the centaur charge from one side while 3 Hell Cavemen attacked from another. Snow Song's Ice Thorn barely damaged the runic armor, but its slowing effect created openings for coordinated attacks. Ironbird spun his hammer, then launched one Hell Caveman into a crater with half its health gone. Arrows bounced from his armor, proving ordinary damage would never defeat him before he crushed the entire formation. Gang Jin ordered Nasong to use armor-breaking strike against the seaman Ironbird's chest plate. The hero charged through Snow Song's slow and drove his sword into the exposed armor gap. Imom immediately redirected every ranged unit toward the wound, concentrating damage instead of wasting arrows across the armor. Ironbird entered a frenzy and slammed his hammer down, releasing earth spikes in every direction. 1 Hell Caveman, cave dwellers, militia, centaurs, and halflings died beneath the sudden area attack. The slimes survived surprisingly well because sharp spikes passed through their elastic bodies, without causing fatal damage. After the ultimate, Ironbird leaned heavily on his hammer, revealing the exhaustion window Imom had expected. Snow Song spent her remaining mana to maintain the slow while wolves, snakes, and slimes restricted his movement. The sticky blue bodies wrapped around his legs, turning every step into a struggle through deep water. Nason used a chain of precise thrust into the chest wound, widening the break with each strike. Finally, the mounted hero gathered gold and light and plunged his sword through Ironbird's head from above. The dwarf king collapsed, and every remaining defender lost courage after witnessing their supposedly invincible ruler fall. Allied troops swept through the fortress, ending resistance and securing the gold mine. Ironbird dropped 1,320 gold coins, split evenly between Imom and Gang Jin. Both sides suffered painful casualties, yet the captured mine promised stable daily gold for future recruitment. The victory also transformed their cautious agreement into a real alliance built through shared risk and fair division. 2 weeks after arrival, Imom unlocked the upgrade requirements for a level 3 lord's mansion. The cost included 10,000 wood, 8,000 stone, iron ore, and 500 gold. Captured mines and expanded production finally made those numbers possible, so he confirmed the upgrade immediately. The system offered either a reliable generic racial building tree or a unique tree, based on his talent. A generic path promised predictable soldiers, while the custom path could become powerful or disastrously specialized. Imom chose the custom tree, trusting Impregnable Fortress to unlock structures matching his cautious strategy. During the upgrade, Wang Ho increased pressure across the region and demanded half of every lord's resources. He targeted a resistant lord named Sun Mayo, promising to destroy the territory publicly as an example. Sun Mayo refused to become a dog, even though previous monster tides had already weakened his defenses. Imom understood the courage but could not cross the region. Before Wang Ho's cavalry reached the target, at the announced hour, 15 wolf cavalry smashed through Sun Mayo's thin wooden walls and scattered his militia. Wang Ho deliberately kept Sun Mayo alive long enough to watch his mansion and remaining subjects destroyed. The system erased Sun Mayo after the mansion fell, and fear spread across every surviving lord. Wang Ho immediately called Imom's name, demanding surrender before the same punishment reached his fortress. Imom remained silent, placing all hope on the level 3 mansion and its unfinished custom building tree. The upgrade completed the next morning, transforming the construction panel into a branching defensive empire. Farmhouse limits tripled, allowing 150 peasants and a massive increase in resource production. New stone walls offered far greater durability than wood, while catapult towers delivered devastating area damage. Heavy crossbow towers provided rapid anti-armor fire, and heavier models launched slower bolts with extreme penetration. The troop branch included barracks, slime pools, and golden Tier 3 recruitment structures. A boar rider nest produced brutal charging cavalry designed to break enemy formations. An earth rock grotto recruited rock pangolin shield guards with enormous health, constitution, and tower-like shields. Imom considered matching Wang Ho with boar riders, then rejected fighting the bully on his preferred battlefield. Defense remained his greatest advantage, so he built the earth rock grotto first. 3 rock pangolin shield guards emerged carrying giant shields and heavy stone hammers. Their health and constitution made them walking walls capable of stopping attacks that erased ordinary troops. Imom later built the boar rider nest, recruiting mobile Tier 3 cavalry for countercharges and flanking. A bone pool also unlocked, converting intact corpses into free skeleton soldiers through low-grade necromancy. Every monster hunt could now produce materials, experience, and fresh expendable defenders at the same time. Imom tested his new troops against hyena men that had previously been too dangerous to engage. The shield guards planted their defenses and absorbed full club strikes for almost negligible damage. Boar riders crashed into the flanks while archers targeted eyes and joints. Behind the unbroken shield wall, the entire camp fell cleanly, confirming Imom finally possessed Tier 3 combat power of his own. Wang Ho still had more cavalry, but the orphan's army now had armor, mobility, range, and layered fortifications. The next Crimson Moon would reveal whether those improvements were enough against a true large-scale assault. On the 20th morning, the system announced a third Crimson Moon with elite monsters and flying attackers. Imom answered by ordering 2 layers of stone walls for catapult towers and multiple heavy crossbow batteries. Workers installed new traps and palisades between barriers, while illumination lighthouses covered every approach. By evening, the territory had become a compact war fortress with no obvious blind spot. Rock pangolin shield guards stood near the gates, boar riders waited behind them, and skeleton reserves filled the walls. Snow Song commanded wolves and magic support, while lizardmen and butterfly sprites prepared for aerial defense. At midnight, an ultra-large tide appeared from every direction beneath the blood-red moon. Goblins, Tier 2 thugs, hyena men, armored elites, and 9 flying gargoyles rushed the territory together. 15 arrow towers and 10 heavy crossbows opened first, thinning ordinary monsters before they touched the outer traps. Catapults launched giant stones into dense formations, erasing entire groups with each slow but devastating impact. Butterfly sprites surrounded the gargoyles, using agility to harass wings while lizardmen fired from below. Snow Song slowed airborne targets with Ice Thorn, allowing heavy crossbows to destroy them one by one. On the ground, the stone wall absorbed blows that would have shattered wooden defenses within seconds. Monsters breaching the outer gate entered a narrow corridor between walls and met the shield guards. The Tier 3 defenders planted their shields, creating an unmovable barrier inside the planned killing zone. Boar riders charged through side gates, smashing trapped enemies while towers fired directly into the crowded corridor. 5 Tier 3 ogres eventually approached, each strong enough to break the stone wall with repeated strikes. Catapults injured them, but could not stop the advance, and 1 ogre opened a breach on the eastern side. Imom moved the shield guards into the gap, turning broken stone into another controlled defensive position. The ogres hammered their shields, yet the formation remained planted while boar riders attacked from both flanks. Snow Song slowed the largest targets, archers aimed for eyes, and catapults concentrated every reload on them. 1 ogre fell, then another, until all 5 collapsed outside the inner wall. The remaining gargoyles and ground monsters were eliminated soon afterward, leaving the core territory intact. Imom lost replaceable units and damaged structures, but no enemy reached the Lord's mansion. The leaderboard again proved that his fortress could survive threats, designed to erase ordinary lords completely. More importantly, the battles showed Tier 3 enemies were manageable when forced into prepared defensive geometry. Wang Ho continued expanding after the Crimson Moon, absorbing weakened territories and growing the Heavenly Wolf Alliance. His cavalry numbers climbed, while surrendered lords supplied troops, food mines, and constant information. A hidden lord named Li Bu finally challenged him publicly, warning everyone that submission only fed a future tyrant. Several independent lords answered Li Bu, forming a resistance before Wang Ho could swallow the entire region. Wang Ho called them insects and mobilized his alliance to crush their connected territories. One by one, the regional conflict shifted from isolated raids into open war between two growing blocks. Imom avoided immediate commitment, because exposing his fortress too early would make it the obvious primary target. Still, he knew Wang Ho's expansion would eventually reach the southeast and surround every neutral lord. Gang Jin shared the concern and began exchanging intelligence through private messages. Henry, a clever high-ranking lord with fast troops and endless tricks, also appeared among the resistance. Unlike heroic leaders, Henry preferred misdirection, quick raids, and leaving before enemies understood what happened. Li Bu's coalition fought bravely, using coordination and air units to defend several resource points. Wang Ho possessed greater numbers, however, and captured smaller positions through relentless pressure. Rather than attack Li Bu's strongest territory, he turned against weaker allies, protecting the coalition's edges. One vulnerable target stood behind crude wooden defenses and could not survive a concentrated cavalry charge. Imom recognized the pattern. Understanding that Wang Ho planned to isolate and consume the resistance gradually, he contacted Li Bu and proposed attacking the Heavenly Wolf Alliance's rear, while its main army moved forward. The goal was not occupation, but destruction, stolen resources, and panic among lords who had trusted Wang Ho's protection. Henry eagerly joined, pleased by a plan built around speed, confusion, and escaping before retaliation. At dawn, Imom assembled rock pangolin shield guards, boar riders, cave dwellers, archers, wolves, and snow song. His fortress retained enough defenders to survive a surprise raid. While the mobile army moved across the region, they struck the territories of Banghai and Zhou Riri, both close followers who had mocked Imom from the beginning. Weak rear guards could not stop Tier 3 troops supported by coordinated ranged fire. Imom destroyed recruitment buildings, emptied warehouses, and withdrew without wasting time on unnecessary occupation. The raids produced 12,000 wood, 8,000 stone, iron ore, and more than 3,000 gold, more valuable than resources. Desperate messages reached Wang Ho while he prepared a decisive attack against Li Bu. Surrendered lords panicked when they realized their homes remained exposed. Despite serving the Heavenly Wolf Alliance, some demanded permission to return, while others questioned whether Wang Ho could truly protect anyone. Jiang Wei blamed Li Bu's coalition, yet the uncertainty already weakened the giant army's morale. Wang Ho refused to retreat, believing any pause would make him appear weak before his vassals. He pushed forward and won the immediate battle, forcing Li Bu's exhausted forces to scatter. Imom and Henry learned the result while withdrawing and understood Wang Ho would return furious. Henry immediately mounted a hellhound and disappeared, demonstrating his philosophy that survival came before dignity. Imom also withdrew, but instead of hiding, he sent a message inviting Wang Ho toward his fortress. He mocked the bully's exposed rear and suggested real strength should have no trouble crushing one defensive lord. The provocation worked because Wang Ho could not tolerate being challenged after his authority had been questioned. Despite tired cavalry and a battered army, he turned southeast and marched directly toward Imom. Li Bu recognized the sacrifice, realizing Imom was drawing the strongest enemy onto prepared walls to buy everyone time. Gang Jin promised support after recovering, but Imom asked him to preserve strength and watch surrounding routes. Inside the fortress, stolen resources financed rapid repairs, more traps, stronger towers, and additional ammunition. Peasants worked beneath illumination light while the enemy crossed the region without proper rest. Imom did not need to defeat Wang Ho in open combat. He only needed the bully to attack badly. When the exhausted army finally crossed the last hill, the fortress appeared like a dark beast of stone. Multiple walls, tower lines, traps, and firing platforms covered the ground Wang Ho had expected to find empty. The vassal lords behind him immediately remembered stories of monster tides dying outside those walls. Wang Ho concealed his surprise and ordered low-tier troops forward to test the defenses. Heavy crossbows fired first, breaking charging formations before they reached the trap field. Hidden asphalt traps collapsed beneath wolf cavalry, filling pits with sticky black sludge that trapped legs and mounts. Arrow towers, lizardmen, and catapults focused on immobilized targets until the first assault disintegrated. Wang Ho's soldiers could not use their speed, the one advantage his entire military system depended upon. Imom had turned open ground into a maze where every route ended beneath overlapping fire. The Heavenly Wolf Alliance suffered casualties without damaging the central walls, and unwilling vassals began retreating mentally. Wang Ho eventually ordered his own cavalry forward, determined to prove elite force could break what fodder could not. Imom saved the heavier crossbows for that moment, aiming every armor-piercing bolt at the lead riders. Several cavalry fell before reaching the walls, while others sank into deeper prepared traps. Snow Song froze trapped wolves, and boar riders countercharged any group finding stable ground. The fortress did not merely endure the assault. It controlled every movement the attackers attempted. Wang Ho reached the outer wall, but could not maintain enough concentrated force to create a lasting breach. After losing more riders, he finally ordered withdrawal and camped beyond tower range to reconsider. The bully who promised to flatten Imom in one charge had been stopped by structures built at half cost. Inside the walls, workers repaired damage faster than Wang Ho's exhausted army could recover. Outside, Alliance lords whispered that the orphan's defensive talent might be more terrifying than berserk. Charge. Night settled over both armies, yet the battle continued through construction rather than weapons. Imom's workers replaced broken traps, repaired tower mechanisms, and reinforced every damaged wall beneath white crystal light. Wang Ho's camp remained exhausted, hungry, and increasingly resentful after being used in a failed assault. An anonymous private message reached Imom from one of the Alliance lords stationed outside. The sender claimed he wanted to survive and offered information in exchange for protection. Imom delayed answering, allowing fear to push the unknown traitor into revealing more than intended. The messenger explained that several coerced lords hated Wang Ho but feared leaving, while his cavalry remained nearby. They were willing to turn if Imom created a believable opportunity and guaranteed their escape. Imom suspected a trap, because Wang Ho could be using false betrayal to lure him beyond the walls. He asked Gang Jin to sweep surrounding routes with centaur scouts before making any movement. The scouts found no major cavalry force nearby, suggesting Wang Ho had moved somewhere else after retreating. Even then, Imom refused to march blindly and instead designed a layered test for the anonymous lord. The supposed defector identified Wang Zhongrok, a commander holding several unwilling territories under Wang Ho's authority. Imom contacted Yuobo, another threatened lord, and arranged a coordinated strike against that force. Gang Jin would close the escape route, Yuobo would attack from inside, and Imom would arrive with the main blow. If the anonymous message was false, none of the three armies would stand alone or expose their home territory. If it was genuine, Wang Ho would lose an important commander and several frightened vassals at once. The plan activated after nightfall, with skeletons advancing first to absorb arrows and reveal hidden positions. Wang Zhongrok believed Yuobo was isolated and ordered his troops to crush the smaller resistance. Then Imom's skeleton sea hit the outer line, turning the carefully arranged attack into confusion. Snow Song released Frost Nova across the battlefield, slowing every enemy caught in the expanding blue halo. Boar Riders smashed the frozen flank while longbow troops fired safely behind the rock pangolin shield formation. Yuobo recognized the opening and charged from the opposite side, trapping Wang Zhongrok between two forces. Gang Jin's centaurs appeared on the hillside moments later and sealed the final route of retreat. The anonymous lords turned against their overseers. Once Wang Ho's commander could no longer punish them, Wang Zhongrok watched the three armies close and understood his entire position had been engineered into a cage. His line collapsed quickly, followed by the loyal commanders Sun Maong and their remaining supporters. Imom avoided unnecessary slaughter, accepting the surrender of troops and lords who had been forced into service. The victory removed another section of Wang Ho's network while giving the resistance new manpower and resources. More importantly, it proved the Heavenly Wolf Alliance could fracture whenever Wang Ho's direct cavalry was absent. Yuobo thanked Imom for arriving before his territory became the next public example. Gang Jin admitted the operation had turned a suspicious message into a decisive regional victory. Imom still refused celebration, because every captured lord increased the number of people his decisions could endanger. The defeated territories needed food, walls, and protection before Wang Ho returned for revenge. He distributed stolen materials strategically, strengthening several allies rather than pulling everything into his own warehouse. That choice earned loyalty more effectively than Wang Ho's threats. Though Imom never called himself a leader, the resistance began treating his fortress as the southeastern anchor of their growing defensive network. Meanwhile, a system event opened an ancient trial tower where lords could challenge floors for tokens and rare rewards. Imom saw the event as a chance to gain tools unavailable through ordinary construction or recruitment. He selected a compact expedition of shield guards, longbow soldiers, cave dwellers, wolves, and Snow Song. The lowest floors contained goblins, kobolds, and other Tier 1 creatures that barely scratched the shield line. Rock pangolin guards blocked each passage while ranged troops eliminated enemies without taking meaningful damage. What challenged ordinary lords became routine farming for a formation designed around defense and controlled fire. By the 10th floor, stronger enemies appeared with coordinated waves and improved attributes. Imom continued advancing, using narrow doors to prevent numbers from surrounding his front line. Later floors introduced corrupted wolves, hellhounds, and stone beetles that attacked with different damage patterns. The shield guards absorbed charges, Snow Song slowed fast targets, and longbows focused anything threatening the rear. Every cleared floor produced tokens, experience, and confidence in the mixed army's growing discipline. A maze floor attempted to waste the time limit through endless forks and hidden traps, instead of solving it normally. Imom ordered Stonehammer and the cave dwellers to dig through the walls. Their underground instincts created a direct path toward the exit, bypassing the tower's intended puzzle completely. The system recognized the legal solution, and Imom cleared the maze with time remaining. Higher floors deployed poisonous insects and self-destructing beetles that could bypass the front line. Snow Song froze the flying swarm with Frost Nova before it reached the vulnerable longbow units. Boar riders intercepted the slowed insects. Although one explosion injured a rider and revealed the new danger, Imom adjusted immediately, spreading ranged troops farther apart and assigning butterfly sprites as aerial warning scouts. Each floor forced a new decision, yet his defensive philosophy remained flexible rather than passive. The expedition eventually reached a major reward threshold and returned with a huge token reserve. In the event shop, Imom found rare materials, unique blueprints, recruitment items, and advanced skill books. One purple blueprint described a gravity well capable of slowing every enemy within a large territorial radius. Another blueprint added elemental enchantments to defensive towers, allowing arrows and bolts to carry frost or other effects. The shop also contained 5 purple crystals, materials Imom had never seen anywhere on the continent. He purchased all 5 despite their enormous token cost, knowing unique structures often mattered more than common troops. For Snow Song, he bought the forbidden ice spell Ice Age, a devastating large-scale control ability. The expedition's rewards were not flashy treasure for personal combat. They were systems that multiplied an entire fortress. Imom returned home carrying the foundation for defenses Wang Ho could not yet imagine. Soon afterward, a dwarf craftsman named Master Ironhammer joined through another recruitment opportunity. The stubborn architect criticized ordinary materials, crooked foundations, and every worker who handled stone carelessly. His pride was exhausting, but his construction talent dramatically improved advanced buildings and mechanical reliability. Imom placed him in charge of the gravity well, promising sufficient resources and freedom over the project. Ironhammer became excited the moment he saw the ancient blueprint, and began directing workers without rest. A black giant tower rose gradually from the center of the territory, built from stone, rune metal, and purple crystal. Its future field would increase gravity across the battlefield, slowing charges before they reached the first trap. The elemental charging tower rose nearby, designed to enchant all defensive projectiles from one central command. Imom selected Frost as the primary enchantment, stacking magical slowing with gravity and asphalt traps. Attackers would not simply face stronger walls. They would lose speed at every layer before reaching them. The fortress was evolving from a passive shell into a machine that controlled distance, movement, and timing. Wang Ho still believed another larger army would solve the problem, which made the new system even more dangerous. Every additional soldier he brought would create a denser target inside Imom's prepared zones. The trial tower continued beyond simple monster waves, eventually placing Imom before a guarded energy crystal. Success required protecting the crystal, while repeated enemy formations attacked from several directions. Imom arranged shield guards around the objective and placed archers behind them. In rotating firing groups, corrupted wolves struck first, followed by faster hellhounds and thick-shelled stone beetles. Every charge broke against the planted shields, and focused arrows converted each wave into additional tokens. A later floor demanded navigation through a trap-filled maze before the countdown expired. Stonehammer listened through the walls, selected a direction, and simply tunneled past every intended route. The cave dwellers demolished obstacles while Imom ignored dead ends, pressure plates, and hidden arrow corridors. That unconventional solution saved time and showed why mixed species were more valuable than one perfect army. On another floor, poisonous beetles released corrosive smoke that weakened armor instead of dealing immediate damage. Self-destructing insects then flew over the shield line and targeted longbow units in the rear. Snow Song's Frost Nova slowed the swarm, but one intercepted beetle exploded against a charging boar rider. The blast threw rider and mount backward, proving even Tier 3 troops could die through poor positioning. Imom separated the ranged formation, rotated wounded units, and used butterfly sprites to mark incoming flight paths. No floor repeated the same solution, forcing him to command actively instead of hiding behind Rotter ability. Eventually, the expedition reached the reward limit and withdrew before greed created unnecessary casualties. Imom entered the ruin shop with more than 30,000 tokens, and prioritized permanent territory improvements. He purchased every purple crystal needed for the gravity well, despite never seeing the material elsewhere. He also bought the elemental charging blueprint, linking magical enchantments across all defensive towers. Snow Song received Ice Age, a forbidden spell capable of freezing a wide battlefield when fully learned. The final major purchase was a unique dwarf engineer contract offering construction speed and durability bonuses. The contract summoned Master Iron Hammer, a broad-shouldered dwarf carrying more attitude than patience. His ingenuity talent increased building speed and final durability, while occasionally producing special improvements. Emergency repair let him restore damaged structures during battle, and structural analysis revealed weak points before collapse. Imom immediately understood that this non-combatant could strengthen every future tower, more than another ordinary soldier. Iron Hammer inspected the territory and criticized uneven stones, weak joints, and careless workers within minutes. The peasants disliked his shouting, but obeyed after seeing construction progress accelerate under his supervision. Imom gave him authority over major projects, beginning with the ancient gravity well in the fortress center. Iron Hammer demanded quality material and promised a structure worthy of dwarf engineering, rather than crude human improvisation. Purple crystal, rune metal, stone, and processed iron disappeared into the foundation as the Black Tower rose. The project should have required 3 days, but Imom's talent and Iron Hammer's supervision shortened it dramatically. Nearby, the elemental charging tower took shape from white crystal and enchanted frameworks. Its first selected element was frost, because slowing enemies multiplied the value of every existing defensive layer. Gravity would burden movement, frost would stiffen limbs, and asphalt would physically trap anything still advancing. Imom's fortress no longer relied only on durability. It weaponized time against every attacker. While construction continued, Gang Jin warned that Wang Ho had also gained powerful rewards from the tower event. The bully placed first in his own route despite heavy losses, and returned carrying a city-shattering hammer. That artifact increased all allied damage against buildings by 100%, while Wang Ho held it. For the first time, Imom faced an item designed specifically to counter his greatest strength. Li Bu opened a private strategy group and gathered the remaining independent lords. Before Wang Ho recovered, Gang Jin, Yuobo, Henry, Li Bu, and several others joined the discussion immediately. Panic dominated the first messages, because ordinary defense could not survive doubled building damage plus overwhelming numbers. Some suggested fleeing, but almost no lord could move a mansion or abandon territory without being erased. Surrender offered no safety either, since Wang Ho consumed resources and troops until vassals became disposable shells. Imom proposed a fourth option, surviving until the newbie period ended and teleportation carried everyone elsewhere. Only 20 days remained, but Wang Ho could destroy isolated lords one by one long before then. The solution required unified retaliation whenever he concentrated his main army against any single member. If Wang Ho attacked Imom, everyone else would strike alliance mines, warehouses, camps, and undefended territories. If he changed targets, Imom's fortress and the remaining members would attack from another direction. Wang Ho's numerical advantage became less decisive when spread across too many points. He needed to protect. The strategy demanded trust, because hesitation from one member could leave another alone against extermination. Imom asked each lord directly whether they would still move once Wang Ho marched toward his fortress. Li Bu swore first, promising full commitment rather than watching the strongest defensive anchor disappear. Gang Jin agreed to empty Wang Ho's rear while Imom delayed the main army. Yuobo accepted with grim humor, saying they were already dead unless they fought together. Other lords followed until only Henry remained, claiming he loved peace far too much for violence. After everyone fell silent, Henry finally joined and offered his mobile mansion as a roaming supply base. His unusual talent allowed him to relocate more easily, making him perfect for reconnaissance, bait, and fast raids. The group named itself the Eight Directions Alliance, reflecting coordinated pressure from every side rather than one ruler. Unlike Wang Ho's organization, membership required no tribute, submission, or surrender of troop control. The alliance existed because every lord understood that losing one defensive point weakened all the rest. Soon, intelligence confirmed Wang Ho had nearly unified the region through conquest, fear, and forced recruitment. Everyone outside the Eight Directions Alliance had either submitted, vanished, or hidden beyond immediate reach. His vassal army exceeded Imom's numbers many times over, backed by wolf cavalry and captured resource nodes. The city-shattering hammer became the centerpiece of his confidence, and he promised to break the turtle shell personally. Imom shared the information calmly, even as several alliance members predicted certain defeat. Numbers mattered, but mass troops also consumed food, moved slowly, and became vulnerable when morale collapsed. Wang Ho needed a spectacle proving resistance impossible, which meant he could not ignore Imom after announcing the attack. Imom needed only to make that spectacle fail before every coerced lord watched. He ordered all stored monster corpses into the bone pool, converting them into skeletons for the outermost line. Fresh militia from the barracks reinforced gates, while slimes prepared to fill breaches with elastic bodies. Rock pangolin shield guards formed the core defense, supported by longbows and boar riders behind walls. Snow Song trained Ice Age while her summon wolves evolved, through repeated battles into stronger frost wolves. Butterfly sprites expanded from a single mascot into a small aerial scouting unit, purchased with gold income. Cave dwellers, hell cavemen, lizardmen archers, and original militia became flexible reserves for threatened sectors. 3 newly obtained tier for earth elementals waited behind the western wall, as hidden emergency anchors. Their massive bodies could plug breaches, manipulate earth, and taunt nearby enemies into attacking them. Imom tested one elemental's giant mud hand, watching it rise from the ground and seize an entire open area. Another released a roar that pulled skeletons from patrol, and forced them to attack its thick stone leg. The damage barely registered, confirming the elementals could become living fortifications inside destroyed sections. Ironhammer completed the elemental charging tower first, and frost light spread across every connected weapon. The gravity well required one final room plate, but the engineer promised completion before Wang Ho arrived. Peasants reinforced walls, stockpiled stones, repaired mechanisms, and prepared boiling defensive mixtures along the battlements. Imom marked the western plain as the likely decisive battlefield, based on Gangjin's cavalry intelligence. Traps were buried in layers, sparse at the edge and nearly continuous closer to the walls. Asphalt pits occupied expected cavalry routes, while ordinary hunting traps covered gaps between them. Catapults received measured stones, crossbows received spare strings, and every tower gained assigned crews. The final gravity well plate locked into position as the entire fortress vibrated. Beneath invisible pressure, even friendly units felt slightly heavier, but enemies entering the field would suffer the full slowing effect. Ironhammer complained that better materials could have doubled the range, proving pride survived every deadline. Imom promised him rest after the battle, and the dwarf immediately rejected the idea to plan future tower upgrades. At sunset, Snow Song returned on a frostwolf with distant reports that Wang Ho was gathering every remaining vassal. The invasion had not begun yet, but scouts described banners, supply carts, and cavalry assembling across the western region. Imom still had a narrow preparation window, enough to strengthen allies and understand the enemy's new command structure. Before those armies moved, the 8 Directions Alliance needed several smaller victories to prove its members would actually fight. The first test came from Wang Ho's 8 lords assigned to blockade Imom. After the failed fortress assault, they camped on a nearby hill, hoping starvation would accomplish what cavalry and direct force could not. Imom's mines and internal farms made the blockade ineffective, while the Watchers consumed supplies they could not replace. Their own lord had marched west to attack softer targets, leaving them exposed and increasingly nervous. One anonymous commander finally admitted that Wang Ho had taken family members, troops, or resources to secure obedience. Imom demanded exact camp numbers, patrol schedules, and the location of every messenger route before accepting the offer. The defector supplied enough detail for Gangjin's scouts to verify the information independently. Imom then contacted Uobo, whose territory had suffered repeated alliance pressure and was close to collapse. Rather than rescue Uobo after the attack began, they decided to turn his threatened territory into bait. Uobo publicly argued with Wang Zhongrock, creating the impression of isolation and desperate weakness. Wang Zhongrock accepted the bait and moved his force forward without waiting for cavalry support. His loyal commanders followed, convinced the frightened resistance would break beneath one concentrated push. Hidden skeletons emerged from dry grass and struck the first rank before it could deploy properly. Frost Nova covered the center, locking dozens of units in place beneath sudden ice. Boar riders tore through one flank, while Uobo charged from his gates and attacked the rear. Gangjin's centaurs appeared on the final ridge, closing the trap with disciplined spear formations. Several vassal lords immediately turned their weapons against Wang Zhongrock. Once escape became impossible. The loyalists screamed betrayal, but their own commander had never protected them from Wang Ho's exploitation. Longbow units concentrated on Wang Zhongrock when he demanded a personal duel from Imom. Imom refused the theatrical challenge and ordered armor-piercing arrows into the loudest target. The commander fell beneath a dense volley, ending the battle faster than any heroic single combat. Sun Maong and other loyal officers were overwhelmed, while coerced troops received the chance to surrender. Uobo survived, the blockade disappeared, and Wang Ho lost one of his most reliable regional enforcers. The victory also gave the Alliance captured maps showing supply lines between Heavenly Wolf territories. Imom used those maps to identify weak warehouses, isolated mines, and lords whose loyalty existed only through fear. Henry volunteered to raid the farthest targets. Because his troops moved quickly and his escape talent remained unmatched. His own territory contained fewer walls than Imom's, but terrain tricks and secret tunnels made it frustrating to attack. Wang Ho eventually marched against Henry, believing a concentrated force could erase the troublesome raider. Henry fought for one day, using water elementals, hellhounds, and narrow ground to create expensive delays. When darkness fell, he activated an SS-rank talent called Golden Cicada sheds its shell. His mansion, warehouse, barracks, and towers folded into glowing building cards that fit inside storage. Henry evacuated through a prepared tunnel, leaving Wang Ho an empty field and no territory to plunder. At dawn, the attacker found trampled ground where an entire settlement had vanished overnight. Henry posted cheerful messages from somewhere else, asking whether Wang Ho enjoyed attacking grass. The humiliation damaged Wang Ho more than a conventional defeat, because every vassal witnessed his wasted effort. Imom recognized Henry as unreliable in manners but invaluable for bait, scouting, and preserving mobile infrastructure. The Eight Directions Alliance began assigning roles according to talent, instead of demanding identical contributions. Gang Jin handled fast reconnaissance and disciplined cavalry support across the eastern routes. Li Bu coordinated broader strategy, air units, and communication between separated territories. Yu Obo held central ground and provided a stubborn defensive point. Despite limited high-tier recruitment, Henry became the moving distraction, capable of striking warehouses and relocating before retaliation. Imom remained the anchor, the fortress everyone could retreat behind when open ground became impossible. This division transformed 8 weaker lords into one network, whose strengths covered individual weaknesses. Wang Ho still controlled more troops, yet his command depended on frightened people responding from scattered locations. Every successful alliance operation forced him to choose which territory, mine, or army deserved protection first. Imom deliberately avoided taking titles, taxes, or control of allied soldiers. That restraint made the contrast with Wang Ho obvious, increasing voluntary cooperation without expensive enforcement. Resource exchanges also became more efficient, with crystal, iron, food, and gold moving according to immediate need. Gang Jin continued delivering Imom's share from the dwarf gold mine exactly as promised. The regular income funded butterfly sprites, shield guards, boar riders, and replacement troops. White crystals supplied lighthouses and magical structures, while the iron mine supported traps and heavy weapons. Imom's territory became an economic center as much as a defensive one, though every investment returned to survival. The bone pool consumed monster and enemy corpses, creating free skeletons for laborious patrols and dangerous first lines. 3 waters produced new slimes slowly inside the pond, expanding the supply of living shields. Snow Song summoned wolves daily, and the strongest survivors gradually developed frost-related traits. The rock pangolin formation drilled around gates, practicing how to rotate damaged shields without opening gaps. Boar riders trained countercharges, learning to wait behind walls rather than rushing at the first visible enemy. Lizardman archers practiced firing over friendly shields, while butterfly sprites marked targets from above. Master Iron Hammer supervised emergency repair teams positioned beside every major tower group. Peasants learned which stones, beams, and mechanisms to replace first during an active siege. The fortress was becoming a living system where civilians, soldiers, heroes, and buildings supported one another. Imom's personal combat ability remained ordinary, but his command multiplied everyone else's usefulness. Wang Ho laughed at that weakness, believing a lord who could not duel was unworthy of ruling. Imom saw no reason to swing a sword when properly placed troops and towers could decide battles more safely. His strength was not standing at the front. It was ensuring the enemy never reached him with strength intact. During another regional skirmish, Heavenly Wolf troops attempted to capture a spring used by Alliance scouts. Gang Jin intercepted them with centaurs, then withdrew before their larger reinforcement group arrived. Henry attacked the reinforcements' empty warehouse during the pursuit, stealing food and arrows. Li Bu's air elementals destroyed the unattended bridge behind them, trapping the force without supplies. Imom sent no army at all. Yet his map analysis selected the routes that made all 3 actions connect. The isolated attackers surrendered after 2 days, adding another crack inside Wang Ho's supposed unity. Not every operation succeeded perfectly, and several alliance troops died during raids or delayed retreats. Still, voluntary cooperation let commanders admit mistakes instead of hiding them from a tyrant. Imom recorded every loss and adjusted future plans, refusing to treat followers as endless disposable numbers. That difference reached coerced lords through private channels, making rebellion increasingly attractive. Wang Ho answered with harsher punishments, public executions, and greater resource demands. The more control he forced, the less reliable his giant army became when direct supervision disappeared. A captured messenger revealed that several vassal commanders planned to surrender. During the next major defeat, Imom did not contact them immediately, fearing desperate people might expose themselves too early. Instead, he instructed the alliance to offer clear surrender terms through public actions, not secret promises. Any unit dropping weapons would live, while loyal officers continuing attacks would receive no mercy. This policy spread quickly because it gave frightened soldiers a visible path out of Wang Ho's control. The bully responded by placing execution squads behind low-tier formations to prevent retreat. Those squads preserved movement temporarily, but poisoned morale before battles even started. Imom realized the final siege would contain two armies, Wang Ho's loyal core and thousands forced to march. The core needed to be broken physically, while the coerced majority needed to be broken psychologically. His walls could handle the first problem, and the bone pool could terrify the second. Turning fallen attackers into fresh skeleton defenders showed every vassal that dying only strengthened the fortress. Imom prepared narrow gates where workers could drag corpses inside, without exposing themselves to cavalry. Iron Hammer built reinforced ramps leading from the battlefield toward the bone pool processing area. The idea sounded horrifying, yet it used source materials exactly as efficiently as every other defensive resource. When Henry witnessed the system, he called the fortress a recycling business disguised as a kingdom. Imom ignored the joke and ordered additional storage for weapons recovered from dead or surrendered troops. Every club became firewood, every spear became material, and every armor plate strengthened another defender. Wang Ho needed constant victories to feed his army, while Imom could profit even from successful enemy attacks. The strategic balance shifted slowly. Though the bully still possessed overwhelming numbers and elite cavalry, a direct regional war remained dangerous because Imom could not move towers across open ground. The Eight Directions Alliance therefore continued delaying raiding and forcing Wang Ho to spend more than he gained. Each surviving day moved them closer to the end of the newbie period and possible teleportation. Wang Ho understood the clock as well and began consolidating for one decisive strike. Scouts reported supply carts moving toward the western center, and vassal armies receiving final mobilization orders. The city-shattering hammer remained with Wang Ho, wrapped in dark gold energy and guarded constantly. His corps had grown to nearly 40 giant wolf knights, supported by nomad cavalry and elite officers. Beyond them marched mixed low-tier forces from almost every conquered territory in the region. Imom estimated that the enemy would outnumber his field army more than 10 to 1. The number frightened several alliance members. Yet Imom reminded them those troops could not all attack one wall simultaneously. Gravity, traps, bottlenecks, frost, and tower range would compress the effective battlefield into manageable sections. The fortress did not need to defeat thousands at once. Only the few hundred who could physically approach each layer. Every line behind those attackers would become blocked, confused, and exposed to aerial weapons. The catapults were designed for exactly that density, while longbows punished officers trying to restore order. Imom's planning focused less on total enemy count and more on the rate at which bodies entered killing zones. If the walls lasted longer than Wang Ho's morale, numerical superiority would become congestion instead of power. Imom ordered scouts to measure every western road, stream crossing, hill, and patch of soft ground. Gangjin's centaurs carried reports quickly, while butterfly sprites observed camps from heights normal soldiers ignored. The intelligence showed Wang Ho organizing 3 layers around his invasion army. Low-tier vassal troops would advance first, exhausting traps, ammunition, and tower durability. Alliance Corps infantry would follow to widen breaches and protect engineering teams. Wolf cavalry and nomad riders would remain behind until the walls looked vulnerable. The city-shattering hammer amplified building damage, meaning even cannon fodder became dangerous after reaching stone. Imom responded by shifting more killing power outward, where attackers could die before touching structures. Gravity well range became the first invisible wall, slowing movement 200 meters from the perimeter. Frost enchantment formed the second, reducing speed again whenever projectiles caused even minor wounds. Asphalt pits formed the third, physically holding feet, hooves, and wheels inside concentrated fire. Hunting traps and palisades filled the remaining routes, forcing formations to twist around one another. Catapults targeted massed infantry, while heavy crossbows reserved shots for cavalry officers and siege units. Longbow companies received raised platforms behind stone walls, improving range without exposing them to direct charge. Rock pangolin guards practiced sealing any breach within moments of an alarm. Earth elementals remained hidden because revealing tier for strength too early would change Wang Ho's tactics. Snow Song mastered Ice Age slowly, learning that its enormous power required several seconds of uninterrupted channeling. Imom assigned shield guards and slime specifically to protect her during that vulnerable casting window. Little Gold and the other sprites received clay pellets, signal ribbons, and orders to disrupt command rather than duel. Three Waters and its descendants occupied water channels near the gates, ready to spread across narrow passages. Skeletons carried hooks and ropes for corpse recovery, while militia guarded the workers operating those lines. Ironhammer inspected each foundation, marking weak points and replacing repair materials where damage would concentrate. He modified several towers beyond their original design, increasing durability through additional internal bracing. One heavy crossbow gained a faster winding system, while a catapult received a reinforced throwing arm. The improvements were small individually, yet dozens together raised the fortress above its system description. Imom also built hidden supply passages beneath the inner wall, allowing troops to rotate without crossing open courtyards. Food, water, arrows, medicine, and spare weapons moved into protected chambers before the enemy arrived. No civilian would remain near the outer line once the alarm sounded. The peasants still feared Wang Ho's giant army, but visible preparation gave that fear somewhere useful to go. Imom addressed them without promising easy victory or pretending the enemy was weak. He explained that every wall existed because their labor mattered, and every tower protected specific people inside. The territory was no longer one orphan's shelter. It had become home to workers, soldiers, refugees, and surrendered tribes. Losing it meant losing the first place where cave dwellers, skeletons, slimes, humans, and dwarves lived under one command. That concrete responsibility mattered more to Imom than rankings, territory size, or public reputation. He had begun alone, yet caution had given hundreds of vulnerable subjects a place where Wang Ho could not command them. Snow Song understood the pressure and promised to remain on the wall until the final enemy withdrew. Stonehammer gathered the cave dwellers and pledged the mines would continue supplying iron, even during siege. Ironhammer refused sentimental speeches, then secretly doubled the supports beneath the mansion. Gangjin sent centaur messengers confirming his army would strike western resource points once Wang Ho committed. Li Bu prepared air elementals to sever bridges and supply columns behind the invasion. Uobo promised to pressure the central territories, preventing nearby reserves from moving southeast. Henry requested the most dangerous role, claiming no one else could annoy Wang Ho professionally enough. His task was to attack rear holdings, display a seemingly vulnerable main force, and draw elite cavalry away if possible. The alliance agreed, though everyone understood Henry might improvise beyond any written plan. Imom created signal codes for success, retreat, emergency support, and suspected betrayal. No one would depend on public channels once Wang Ho began flooding them with threats and false information. Each member received fallback routes toward friendly land and timed rendezvous points for wounded troops. This operational structure made the alliance more than a chat group and transformed promises into executable action. A captured vassal warned that Wang Ho had ordered commanders to watch each other for disloyalty. Execution teams now included relatives of different lords, ensuring hesitation could trigger mutual punishment. The system of fear looked strong but created confusion, because no commander trusted the person beside him. Imom predicted that one obvious battlefield reversal would cause the entire outer army to fragment. The real challenge was surviving long enough for that reversal to become undeniable. Wang Ho began sending messages every morning, announcing new surrendered territories and demanding Imom respond. Imom remained silent, refusing to feed the bully's performance or reveal emotional pressure. The silence became threatening by itself because everyone remembered the last army that disappeared outside those walls. Several frightened lords privately asked whether surrendering to Imom would protect them. Before the invasion, he rejected premature secret defections that would expose people, without changing the military balance. Instead, he promised public mercy for anyone dropping weapons after the battle began. That rule spread through hidden contacts and became the first crack. Wang Ho could not punish immediately. Then Yudong, a covert source inside the Heavenly Wolf Alliance, delivered the most important intelligence. Wang Ho had marked every remaining independent territory and planned to destroy Imom first. With the full regional host, his city-shattering hammer did not merely strengthen his own attacks. It doubled building damage for nearby allied troops. The artifact turned thousands of weak soldiers into a genuine threat, if even a fraction reached the walls. More alarming, Wang Ho intended to use conquered lords as the first wave while preserving loyal elites. The invasion would depart after one final day of preparation, giving Imom less time than previous estimates. When the message entered the alliance group, several members panicked and reconsidered their promises. Uobo admitted the enemy possessed at least 10 times Imom's troop count. Jinbin feared doubled structure damage would erase stone walls before reinforcements achieved anything. Laya declared the situation hopeless, and the chat filled with overlapping retreat suggestions. Imom stopped the panic with 3 words, ordering everyone to remain quiet. He reminded them that the hammer only mattered when troops reached buildings, which was exactly what his field denied. The gravity, frost, asphalt, traps, arrows, and catapults all attacked before the wall itself became relevant. Wang Ho's items strengthened the final step of an assault, but did nothing to guarantee he would reach that step. Then Imom asked the question that decided whether the alliance truly existed. When Wang Ho attacked his fortress, would the others launch their promised offensives despite possible retaliation? The group remained silent because everyone understood Imom might die while buying them the opening. If they held forces back, Wang Ho would destroy the anchor and turn on them with even greater strength. Li Bu answered first, swearing to attack the moment the invasion began and accept the consequences. Gang Jin followed, promising to empty Wang Ho's rear and cut returning routes. Yuobo cursed his fear and committed everything, choosing one real battle over slow extermination. Jin Bin, Laya, Gang Rock, and the remaining members each declared the same decision. Henry waited until the tension peaked, then agreed while requesting freedom to run if his bait became suicidal. The 8 Directions Alliance changed in that moment from temporary cooperation into a mutual survival pact. Their relationship was not built on affection, blood, or shared ambition, but on a clear understanding of consequence. Wang Ho expected isolated prey, yet his attack would trigger coordinated wars across every direction of his territory. The bully's largest army would also become the moment his rear became emptiest. Imom accepted the commitments without thanking anyone dramatically, because gratitude could wait until survival became real. He sent final target assignments, travel windows, and confirmation codes to every commander. Afterward, he returned to the walls and found Snow Song waiting beside the newly completed gravity well. She had sensed the mood change and understood the coming battle would decide more than one territory. Imom told her the alliance had committed, but the fortress still had to hold the main force alone at first. Snow Song answered by opening the Ice Age skill panel and showing that mastery had reached combat readiness. One completed channel could freeze a large section of battlefield and reduce enemy speed and attack power dramatically. The spell carried a full day cooldown, meaning timing would decide whether it saved the fortress or accomplished nothing. Imom reserved it for Wang Ho's loyal core, not the disposable first wave. He wanted the coerced troops to see ordinary defenses defeat them. Before revealing the strongest magical answer, 3 waters received a similar reserve order, remaining behind the inner wall until a breach formed. The earth elementals would also wait, hidden from scouts and enemy range estimates. Every secret resource had one defined trigger, preventing panic from wasting several trump cards on the same problem. Iron Hammer finished the final inspection and reported the fortress could survive damage beyond its original specifications. He warned that repeated strikes enhanced by the city hammer could still collapse sections without active repair. Imom assigned mobile work teams to follow Iron Hammer's signals during combat. The workers volunteered despite danger, because a repaired wall could save every family sheltering behind it. Night fell on the final preparation day, and no one inside the territory slept deeply. Frost covered tower ammunition beneath the elemental charger, giving every arrow a faint blue edge. The gravity well hummed like a buried storm, invisible but heavy across the western field. Beyond the walls, distant scouts reported Wang Ho's army fires multiplying across the western assembly grounds. The host was not moving yet, leaving one final phase of preparation before the decisive march began. Before the final march, Imom reviewed everything gained from the ancient ruins and assigned each reward a precise purpose. The Heart of Earth Shaker had summoned 3-tier for earth elementals with enormous health and stamina. When rooted, they reduced incoming physical damage and became almost impossible to knock backward. Their taunting roar forced nearby enemies to attack them, making each elemental a perfect emergency wall. The gravity well reduced enemy movement by nearly 1/3 and dragged low-flying units toward the ground. That second effect mattered because previous Crimson Moons had proven aerial enemies could bypass ordinary walls entirely. Snow Song's Ice Age added massive frost damage and a deep slow across a wide selected area. Unlike her smaller spells, it required a short channel and could only be used once each day. The dwarf engineer contract summoned Iron Hammer after Imom spent nearly every remaining ruin token. Iron Hammer's first inspection found flaws in the heavy crossbows that the system blueprint considered acceptable. He adjusted gears, rebound arms, and bowstrings, increasing attack range and durability beyond normal limits. One tower's range extended far enough to engage enemy officers before they entered ordinary arrow distance. Another improvement strengthened a catapult's splash radius, making clustered formations even more vulnerable. Imom realized unique support units could improve existing investments. Instead of demanding entirely new construction, the ruined leaderboard still placed Wang Ho first because he reached the 31st floor. Imom ranked only 8th after withdrawing at the 29th floor. Rather than risk irreplaceable Tier 3 troops, Wang Ho used the public ranking to mock him, claiming the defensive lord had finally revealed his limitations. Imom let the insult stand while quietly deploying Tier 4 elementals and forbidden defensive technology. Public fame gave Wang Ho confidence, but carefully selected rewards gave Imom actual battlefield control. Gang Jin understood the difference and privately joked that Wang Ho had probably sacrificed half his army for the extra floors. Han replaced second by abusing mobility and strange talent interactions, reinforcing his reputation as an unpredictable survivor. The alliance compared ruin rewards and traded items according to compatibility rather than pride. Li Bu received materials for air units, while Yu Obo gained weapons improving his defensive infantry. Gang Jin invested in centaur recruitment and repaired losses from the dwarf battle. Imom kept the structures and controlled tools that multiplied his fortress advantage specifically. This exchange prevented rare items from becoming useless, simply because the wrong lord had found them. Wang Ho did the opposite, collecting tribute and storing rewards centrally to display personal dominance. His vassals remained weak, ensuring they could never challenge him, but also making the entire alliance dependent on one army. Imom's decentralized allies became more capable each week, creating several threats Wang Ho needed to monitor simultaneously. The coming invasion represented the bully's attempt to destroy that model before it matured. Yudong reported that Wang Ho spent days gathering every available troop, including wounded units and unfinished recruits. Supply officers struggled to feed the host, but complaints were punished as disloyalty. Several conquered lords brought only peasants with clubs, because their real soldiers had died in previous wars. Wang Ho still counted those bodies as strength, intending them to absorb traps and arrows. His corps included nearly 40 wolf knights, cavalry nomads, armor beast, and commanders carrying stronger equipment. Jiang Wei remained beside him, organizing execution teams and repeating promises that the city hammer guaranteed victory. Zhou Riri and other early followers supplied archers, kobolds, goblins, and low-tier support troops. The army looked overwhelming from a distance, yet its sections differed sharply in training, loyalty, and exhaustion. Imom marked those differences on the map and assigned tower priorities accordingly. Officers and supervisors would receive longbow fire, weakening control over coerced formations. Fast cavalry would receive heavy crossbows, asphalt pits, and hidden countercharges. Dense infantry would receive catapults, frost arrows, and the gravity wells congestion. Armored beasts would face earth elementals, shield guards, and concentrated armor-piercing attacks. No ammunition would be wasted on a target better handled by another layer. The fortress's greatest advantage was not having more weapons, but using the correct weapon at the correct distance. Iron Hammer created colored signal flags for each tower group because shouted orders could vanish beneath battle noise. White meant normal fire, blue meant frost concentration, red meant priority officer, and black meant structural emergency. Butterfly sprites carried duplicates between walls if smoke blocked visual contact. Snow Song drilled signal recognition with every ranged captain until responses became automatic. Imom also placed decoy banners and empty firing platforms to confuse enemy range estimates. Some weak wooden towers remained visible outside the real defensive line, tempting attackers toward deeper traps. The Central Lord's mansion received additional internal supports, though Imom expected no enemy to approach it. Farmhouses nearest the western wall were emptied and converted into temporary hospitals and supply depots. Civilians moved deeper into the eastern section, where stone barriers and earth elementals provided final protection. Sumu sent a private message after hearing invasion rumors, offering daily blessing items despite her weaker territory. Imom accepted useful supplies but instructed her not to move troops or expose herself. The white crystal trade from their first day had helped both survive, and neither forgot that practical connection. Other small lords sent food, medicine, or information because Imom's resistance represented their chance to avoid forced tribute. He distributed these resources openly among defenders, preventing suspicion that he was hoarding outside support. Snow Song watched the varied supplies arrive and noted how many people now depended on the fortress. Imom answered that dependence was dangerous, because one mistake could kill people who never chose the battlefield. That fear did not paralyze him. It made every unnecessary gamble unacceptable. He inspected the peasant shelters personally, checking water, ventilation, and escape passages beneath the mansion. An orphan with no family had become responsible for hundreds of lives gathered behind his walls. The contrast felt heavier than the gravity well, yet it also clarified why surrender was impossible. Wang Ho would not merely take resources. He would turn every protected person into another disposable servant. Imom preferred risking himself on prepared ground to watching that happen slowly. The final day passed through constant drills, repairs, and messenger traffic. Gang Jin confirmed Eastern Alliance forces were ready to move. Once Wang Ho crossed the chosen boundary, Li Bu positioned air units near bridges and supply lines without revealing them to ground scouts. Yuobo strengthened his central defenses, prepared to resist any reserve force left behind. Henry vanished entirely from ordinary channels, a sign that his bait operation had already begun. Imom received only one message from him, containing a laughing face and a promise to make Wang Ho furious. The lack of detail was concerning, but Henry's improvisation worked best when enemies could not predict it. At noon, Wang Ho posted an ultimatum demanding Imom open the gates and surrender every mine, hero, and blueprint. He offered to spare ordinary peasants while promising public execution for the Lord, who embarrassed him. Imom finally answered, inviting Wang Ho to collect the fortress personally if his army was truly unbeatable. The short response spread across the region faster than any long speech. Vassal soldiers read it secretly, some frightened by Imom's confidence and others quietly encouraged. Wang Ho reacted exactly as expected, announcing that the turtle shell would become rubble by sunset the following day. He ordered every banner raised in every territory to provide its remaining force. The Eight Directions Alliance remained silent publicly, preserving the illusion that Imom stood alone. Privately, confirmation codes arrived one after another from all 7 partners. Gang Jin sent the centaur symbol, Li Bu sent a wind mark, and Yuobo sent a cross sword. Henry sent a drawing of a running dog chasing an empty cart, which Imom accepted as confirmation. Iron Hammer finished his last improved crossbow and collapsed onto a stool, with grease across his beard. He claimed the structure could shoot through a wolf knight, and the coward hiding behind him. Imom told him to sleep, but the dwarf refused and moved his repair tools closer to the western wall. Snow Song completed one final Ice Age practice channel without releasing the spell. The surrounding air frosted, showing she could maintain concentration even under noise from training troops. 3 waters split again that evening, producing another small slime for the inner defense reserve. The bone pool released its final skeleton batch from accumulated monster corpses. Imom placed those fresh skeletons outside the first wall, where their destruction would reveal enemy attack power. The original militia took safer positions behind stone, rewarded for surviving since the territory's first day. Several had reached higher levels and now moved with discipline, far beyond their starting description. Imom recognized faces among them, including the soldier injured by the first boar hunt. Their growth proved that preservation could turn weak units into reliable veterans over time. Wang Ho treated low-tier soldiers as fuel, while Imom allowed even militia to accumulate experience. That difference would matter once elite attackers entered narrow spaces and needed coordinated resistance. At dusk, the Western scouts reported the enemy assembly had broken camp and begun moving southeast. Supply carts formed the center, cavalry guarded the front, and coerced infantry stretched behind beyond visible range. The army would require most of the night to approach because thousands of mixed units moved slower than wolf riders. Imom used the remaining hours to rest shifts rather than keep everyone awake through fear. The walls remained quiet, lighthouses dimmed, and only patrols watched the distant dust. Inside the mansion, children of newly recruited peasants slept beside parents who had never expected a second night. Cave dwellers rested near mine tunnels, slimes floated in water channels, and skeletons stood without movement. The strange population looked impossible by old-world standards, yet each group belonged to the same territory now. Imom walked through them silently, receiving bows, nods, ripples, and flickering blue soul fire. No speech could add more meaning than the simple fact that these people trusted the walls behind him. He returned to the western rampart before dawn, where Snow Song and Iron Hammer were already waiting. Far away, the horizon carried a continuous glow from torches moving like a river of fire. The invasion had finally left its assembly ground, but the army still remained beyond combat range. Imom ordered the first alarm, moving civilians into shelters and soldiers toward assigned positions. The final preparation phase ended, and the fortress shifted from sleeping city to silent weapon. The alarm bells carried across every district, and workers abandoned normal production without confusion. Farm tools disappeared into storage, medical supplies moved forward, and doors to the civilian shelters closed. Arrow captains checked strings, catapult crews tested release levers, and crossbow teams loaded their first bolts. Iron Hammer walked the walls striking foundations with his hammer, listening for weakness through vibration. Snow Song climbed the central platform where she could cast toward either western gate or northern flank. Little Gold and the butterfly sprites rose into pre-dawn darkness, tracking enemy columns beyond ordinary sight. The sprites returned in rotation with ribbon signals describing pace, formation, and unexpected detachments. Wang Ho had placed wolf cavalry at the front, perhaps hoping speed would force an immediate panic. Imom kept every tower silent, refusing to reveal maximum range before the enemy committed. The gravity well remained inactive, and the elemental charging tower held its frost enchantment in reserve. From a distance, the fortress looked dark, abandoned, and possibly frightened by the approaching host. Jiang Wei interpreted the silence as weakness and told vassal commanders that Imom had finally lost confidence. Several lords repeated the claim because believing it made the march easier to endure. Others remembered the first failed assault and watched the horizon with pale faces. The enemy halted beyond visible tower range shortly after sunrise and began forming lines across the plain. Dust settled slowly, revealing banners from nearly every conquered territory in the Nubi region. Kobolds, goblins, skeletons, militia, beastmen, archers, and armored monsters filled the outer formations. Behind them waited wolf knights in heavy armor, mounted nomads, and Wang Ho's personal commanders. The city-shattering hammer rested across Wang Ho's saddle, radiating dark golden energy through nearby troops. Its aura confirmed the intelligence, strengthening every allied attack against buildings within range. Imom measured that radius through the system and marked when the effect would touch his outer wall. The hammer offered no bonus to movement, defense, morale, or resistance against tower fire. That limitation remained the center of his entire plan. Wang Ho used a metal speaking tube and demanded the gate open before he destroyed everyone inside. His voice rolled against stone, but no defender answered or exposed a position. Imom remained below the rampart until the enemy finished arranging, denying the bully a dramatic confrontation. The silence irritated Wang Ho, who had expected fear, insults, or visible surrender. He ordered banners advanced and drums sounded, creating a display intended to crush morale before combat. Inside, peasants heard the thunder through thick walls and held their families closer. Imom activated the internal communication network, calmly confirming that every sector remained ready. No defender abandoned position, and no civilian shelter reported panic serious enough to disrupt operations. Snow Song noted that Wang Ho's first weapon was spectacle rather than force. Imom agreed, understanding the bully needed his vassals to believe victory was already guaranteed. He finally appeared on the western wall once every enemy could see him clearly. Wang Ho shouted that the orphan should kneel while mercy remained available. Imom looked across the army and asked whether this enormous crowd had come to fight one supposed coward. The response carried through a system amplifier, reaching commanders and frightened vassals alike. Several soldiers lowered their eyes, because the question exposed how much power Wang Ho required to face one territory. Wang Ho raised the city hammer and promised one swing would break every wall. Built through cheap talent, Imom answered that reaching the wall would be the difficult part. He then stepped away from the battlement, refusing further conversation before the battle. The bully interpreted the withdrawal as fear and ordered engineers to prepare the first advance. Low-tier lords received instructions to send all units forward and trigger every hidden trap. Many protested that their troops had not recovered from previous campaigns. Jiang Wei threatened immediate execution for anyone delaying the command. Supervising squads moved behind the first formation with blades drawn toward their supposed allies. Imom watched through a narrow observation slit and identified exactly where those squads stood. He marked them with red flags for longbow captains once the charge entered range. Across the region, the Alliance's secondary operations also began moving. Gangjin led centaurs toward unprotected mines feeding Wang Ho's cavalry production. Li Bu's air elementals approached supply bridges under cloud cover. Uobo prepared to attack central warehouses after nearby reserves moved west. Henry remained unseen, which meant either his bait was working or he had found a new distraction. Imom did not need immediate reports, because public silence protected their plans. His own job was simple to describe and difficult to perform. Hold until Wang Ho lost control. The first enemy rank contained several hundred disposable troops packed closely for individual maneuver. Their commanders intended mass to crush traps through sheer body count. Imom intended the same density to multiply every catapult impact and frost effect. The outer skeleton line waited motionless behind scattered wooden stakes beyond the main stone wall. These undead were not expected to survive. They existed to disrupt rhythm and reveal attack concentration. 3 waters rested inside the second barrier, surrounded by smaller slimes and militia. Earth elementals remained hidden beneath camouflage sheets that resembled piles of stone. Rock pangolin guards waited at gate intersections where they could reach any breach quickly. Boar riders remained farther back, conserving stamina for countercharges instead of wasting strength on fodder. The original 8 militia stood with Snow Song's reserve. Veterans now trusted to coordinate weaker troops. Every unit had survived enough battles to understand why waiting mattered. Wang Ho's army began chanting his name, though the sound weakened toward the rear. The coerced sections repeated it late and without energy, exposing the difference between loyalty and fear. Imom ordered record keepers to note which banners showed hesitation during the opening advance. Those groups would receive mercy signals earlier, increasing the chance of surrender. The strategy depended on treating enemy morale as another defensive structure that could be broken layer by layer. A messenger sprite returned and signaled that no hidden cavalry column circled toward the eastern side. Wang Ho had concentrated nearly everything before the western fortress, exactly as Imom hoped. The absence of reserves also meant alliance raids would strike valuable targets with minimal opposition. Gang Jin's confirmation symbol flashed privately, indicating the gold routes were already severed. Li Bu reported one supply bridge destroyed and a second under attack. Yuobo remained waiting, because central garrisons had not yet reacted. Imom sent no reply longer than acknowledgement, keeping attention on the field before him. The sun climbed behind Wang Ho's army, throwing long shadows toward the fortress. That direction forced attackers to look into bright light, reflected from white crystal panels on the towers. Iron Hammer had installed those panels deliberately, another small advantage absent from system descriptions. Enemy archers raised hands against the glare while trying to judge range. Imom smiled slightly, realizing the dwarf had improved even the sunlight. Wang Ho finished positioning his elite cavalry beyond the disposable formation. Jiang Wei rode along the line promising rewards, territory, and protection after the fortress fell. Behind him, execution squads repeated the simpler promise of death for retreat. The first wave finally began moving, slowly at first as reluctant troops pushed one another forward. Drums accelerated, and overseers forced the pace until the mass became a running wall. Still held tower fire, allowing the front ranks to enter the deepest overlapping zones. Several vassal commanders mistook the silence for broken mechanisms and shouted that the fortress had no ammunition. The statement spread through the formation, turning fear into dangerous confidence. At 150 meters, the first troops crossed the dormant gravity well boundary. Imom watched the distance marker drop and waited for hundreds more bodies to enter. The front rank reached disguised hunting traps, but no mechanism activated because crews had locked them manually. Wang Ho's officers saw safe ground and ordered the entire first formation forward. That was the commitment Imom needed, placing nearly every disposable unit inside one controlled field. He raised one hand, and every defender focused on the signal rather than the screaming enemy. Iron Hammer gripped the gravity well lever beside the black tower. Snow Song lifted her staff as frost energy gathered through the charging network. Catapult crews released safety locks, heavy crossbows aligned, and longbow captains marked execution squads. The first wave believed it had crossed the danger zone untouched. Imom delayed the signal for one final heartbeat, letting rear ranks push the trapped front even deeper. Enemy officers screamed for speed, unaware that their own pressure had removed every easy route backward. The front ranks now stood between locked traps, hidden pits, and hundreds of comrades still advancing. Wang Ho raised the city hammer, already celebrating the apparent failure of Imom's famous defenses. Jiang Wei ordered the execution squads closer, ensuring hesitation would create even tighter congestion. Snow Song watched Imom rather than the enemy, waiting for the precise second selected during rehearsal. Iron Hammer tightened both hands around the lever and grinned beneath his soot-darkened beard. Every tower captain held breath while loaded mechanisms strained against their restraints. The army had entered as deeply as the killing field allowed. Imom brought his hand down, the gravity well awakened, and every attacker inside to 100 meters suddenly felt the earth drag downward. Front runners stumbled face first, while those behind crashed into them and turned formation into a tangled mass. Wang Ho ordered them forward anyway, insisting double building damage made speed irrelevant once bodies reached stone. Imom activated the elemental charging tower, and pale frost spread across every loaded arrow and bolt. The first volley fell like winter rain, freezing wounds and stacking another slow over the artificial gravity. Troops already struggling to walk became nearly stationary targets. Beneath the overlapping tower network, hidden asphalt traps opened necks, swallowing feet and hooves in sticky black sludge. The once terrifying charge transformed into thousands of exhausted bodies, trapped inside one giant firing range. Catapults released their first stones, each impact clearing a bloody circle through the packed formation. Heavy crossbows ignored fodder and struck execution officers trying to force the line forward. Longbow captains targeted supervisors marked earlier, removing control faster than they removed ordinary soldiers. Several vassal units stopped advancing the moment no blade remained behind their backs. Wang Ho screamed for them to continue and promised death to anyone retreating. His command arrived too late because tower fire had already divided the army into disconnected pockets. Skeletons outside the wall rose from concealment and attacked trapped enemies. without concern for survival. They dealt little damage, yet every second spent fighting them kept attackers beneath frost arrows. Fallen bodies were hooked by workers and dragged through narrow recovery gates toward the bone pool. Minutes later, fresh skeletons emerged inside the fortress and climbed the walls carrying recovered weapons. The sight shattered morale among troops who realized their deaths literally strengthened Imom's defense. One soldier dropped his weapon and tried to flee, only to be killed by an alliance supervisor. That execution triggered more panic, because the choice now appeared to be death from either direction. Imom broadcast the mercy rule, promising survival to anyone abandoning weapons and moving away from the walls. Dozens obeyed immediately, followed by entire low-tier groups once officers disappeared. Wang Ho's first wave collapsed before reaching the stone barrier in meaningful numbers. Nearly 200 casualties covered the field, while Imom's main force remained untouched. Jiang Wei warned that feeding more cannon fodder would only produce more skeletons and deeper rebellion. Wang Ho cursed the vassals as worthless and finally ordered his loyal corps into battle. More than 30 wolf cavalry formed around him, while 11 mounted nomads spread toward the flanks. The city's shattering hammer blazed dark gold as its aura reached every corps attacker. Wolf howls rolled across the plain, and the elite charge began with speed ordinary troops could never match. Imom ordered heavy crossbows to focus on Wang Ho and the leading riders. Massive armor-piercing bolts crossed the battlefield, but Wang Ho used the great hammer as a shield. Several bolts deflected from the artifact, leaving pale marks while the bully laughed at the failed attack. Other riders were not protected, and two wolves collapsed after bolts pierced armor and muscle together. The surviving cavalry entered the gravity well but maintained far more momentum than the earlier fodder. Frost arrows struck armor, slowing mounts gradually while nomad archers fired toward tower crews. Imom activated deeper asphalt traps only after the riders passed the first visible pits. Ground collapsed beneath the front section, throwing wolves and armored men into black adhesive sludge. Cavalry behind swerved around them, breaking the charge into smaller groups exposed to separate crossfire. Snowsong cast ice age across the largest cluster after shield guards protected her channel. A freezing storm exploded over the western field, cutting movement and attack speed across the entire zone. Wolf cavalry became nearly motionless between gravity, frost enchantment asphalt, and the forbidden spell. Catapults redirected toward trapped elites, while longbows poured arrows into unprotected joints. Wang Ho forced his mount forward through the slowing effects and reached the base of the western wall. His hammer aura doubled every allied strike, and cracks spread rapidly beneath concentrated cavalry attacks. Jiang Wei shouted that the wall was failing, restoring confidence among riders who had survived the approach. Imom waited until the damaged section reached the threshold mark during Iron Hammer's inspection. He ordered defenders away from the expected collapse point, instead of wasting bodies trying to preserve it. The stone section burst inward under another hammer strike, opening the breach Wang Ho had wanted. 3-tier for earth elementals rose from camouflage behind the broken wall, their massive bodies planted into the ground and completely filled the opening. Before cavalry could enter, one elemental released taunting roar, forcing nearby wolf knights to attack the stone giants instead of choosing targets. The riders hammered at rooted bodies that reduced physical damage and refused every knockback. Rock pangolin guards formed behind them, creating a second living wall in case one elemental fell. 3 waters sent slimes beneath cavalry feet, turning the breach into a slippery, crowded trap. Boar riders charged from side passages and smashed trapped wolves against broken stone. Snow Song maintained smaller ice attacks on Wang Ho, preventing him from escaping the congestion cleanly. The city hammer increased damage against buildings, but it offered no special power against tier for elementals. Wang Ho realized too late that Imom had intentionally allowed a controlled breach, where the artifact became less useful. Longbow units fired from elevated angles into riders compressed around the elementals. The loyal cavalry began falling one by one, unable to use speed, formation, or open ground. Workers recovered wolf corpses and damaged armor whenever gaps opened, feeding the fortress's recycling system. Outside the core fight, coerced lords watched their elite protectors disappear against creatures Wang Ho had never revealed. Then continent-wide announcements reported heavenly wolf territories being destroyed. Behind the invasion army, Gang Jin had captured resource points, Li Bu had severed supply lines, and Yu Obo's allies had raided exposed holdings. A second destruction notice followed, striking vassals whose homes stood near the first fallen territory. Panic moved through the rear faster than any messenger could control. Lords abandoned the siege to save warehouses, families, and mansions left under minimal guard. Jiang Wei tried to stop them with execution squads, but thousands of frightened soldiers overwhelmed a few dozen supervisors. Wang Ho ordered everyone back. Yet his voice could not compete with system notices confirming losses. The outer army dissolved into separate groups fleeing in different directions. At the breach, 3 wolf knights died beneath boar rider charges and concentrated arrows. Wang Ho stared at the earth elementals, the fallen cavalry, and the corpses entering the bone pool. For the first time, he understood the siege had become complete defeat rather than temporary resistance. He ordered retreat, dragging the surviving loyal corps away before Ice Age's remaining frost faded. Imom did not pursue beyond tower range, refusing to exchange prepared advantage for emotional satisfaction. Heavy crossbows fired at retreating riders until they crossed the gravity well boundary. The fortress stood behind them with one broken wall section and no threat to the lord's mansion. Iron Hammer began screaming repair orders before the last enemy disappeared over the hill. Workers poured stone into the controlled breach, rebuilding under the same system that had halved its original cost. Imom counted losses and found the victory cheaper than every defender had feared. Skeletons had been spent, walls damaged, and ammunition consumed. But irreplaceable troops remained mostly alive. Wang Ho lost more than 200 vassal troops and several precious wolf knights. More damaging, his promise to destroy the fortress publicly had failed before the entire region. Vassals now knew service could not protect their homes. While Imom's alliance had acted exactly as promised, the first direct title promise was complete. Wang Ho's army had reached half-price walls and broken itself. Imom allowed the defenders one breath of relief, then ordered immediate recovery before another assault arrived. Snow Song collapsed from mana exhaustion but remained conscious, and satisfied that Ice Age had stopped the core charge. 3 waters absorbed wounded slimes into the pond, beginning slow healing through its water ability. Earth elementals returned behind the reconstructed section, still carrying enormous health despite concentrated attacks. Iron Hammer examined damaged towers and declared several could be improved while repaired. The peasants laughed nervously at his enthusiasm, grateful that the battle had ended without reaching their shelters. Private messages flooded Imom's panel from allies confirming successful raids and asking about his condition. He replied that the fortress held and ordered everyone to preserve forces, rather than chase scattered vassals. A victorious alliance could still collapse through greed if members raced to seize abandoned territory. Imom prioritized maintaining the shared front until Wang Ho's next move became clear. That restraint surprised several lords, expecting him to claim regional leadership after the defense. He wanted security, not another throne built through fear and tribute. Wang Ho regrouped beyond range, with rage replacing the confidence he had displayed before the charge. His surviving commanders gathered inside a temporary tent and avoided looking at one another. No one could recommend another direct assault after witnessing gravity, frost, traps, elementals, and endless skeletons. One lord called Imom cowardly for refusing open combat, then panicked when Wang Ho questioned whether that meant defeat. Jiang Wei finally argued that attacking the fortress played entirely into Imom's talent. The proper strategy was to avoid the walls and destroy his allies one by one, without surrounding territories, mines, and friendly armies. Even the strongest fortress would become isolated. Wang Ho accepted the idea because it offered a way to restore authority, without admitting the siege had failed. He ordered vassals home to reinforce defenses and assembled fast Tier 3 troops for a new offensive. The first target would be Yuobo, whose central position and limited fortifications made him easier than Imom. Wang Ho wanted Imom to watch allies die beyond the reach of his towers. Yudong transmitted the new plan privately before the Heavenly Wolf Command finished organizing. Inside the repaired fortress, Imom opened the 8 Directions channel and shared the intelligence immediately. Yuobo understood his territory would become bait whether he agreed or not. Gang Jin proposed massing forces to rescue him, but Wang Ho's rapid response cavalry could intercept openly moving armies. Li Bu warned that a straightforward relief march would expose everyone to an ambush in open ground. Imom studied the map and rejected any plan that allowed Wang Ho to choose the time and place. Instead, he proposed removing the rapid response force from the real battlefield before the rescue began. Someone needed to raid the northwest repeatedly and provoke Wang Ho into a long pursuit. Henry volunteered before anyone could ask, claiming baiting angry men was his strongest profession. His mobile building cards and golden cicada talent gave him the best chance of surviving if caught. Alliance members transferred elite fast troops to Henry under cover of darkness. The following morning would decide whether Wang Ho remained hunter or became the target of a larger trap. Before dawn, Henry received centaur archers, air elementals, water elementals, and other fast units from alliance members. He led them northwest while Imom assembled the strongest ground force for a separate march. Wang Ho divided his army exactly as predicted after abandoning the direct fortress strategy. Jiang Wei received more than 1,000 mixed troops and orders to destroy Yuobo's territory. Wang Ho kept the elite rapid response cavalry, prepared to intercept any Alliance rescue column. He believed the split created an unavoidable choice between abandoning Uobo or losing rescuers in open ground. Uobo reinforced streets and buildings, knowing his weaker walls could not imitate Imom's layered fortress. His dwarf musketeers occupied windows, spearmen guarded narrow alleys, and civilians withdrew around the mansion. Imom ordered him to delay rather than seek victory, preserving every position long enough for the trap to close. At the same time, Henry approached Jinryong's Heavenly Wolf territory in the northwest. Air elementals slipped forward and ignited the granary, creating black smoke and immediate confusion inside the walls. Centaur archers attacked from the south while Tier 1 troops created a false mass. Along the western side, Jinryong shifted defenders toward the noise. Never realizing Henry's real force approached the lightly guarded north gate, Henry charged through that weakness on a hellhound with elite water elementals behind him. His raiders ignored prolonged combat, swept the warehouse, and escaped through the eastern gate within 10 minutes. By the time Jinryong returned, the resources were gone and a mocking message remained scratched into the ground. The desperate lord contacted Wang Ho, exaggerating the attackers into several hundred troops with centaurs and air elementals. Wang Ho recognized Henry's name and believed the main 8 directions force had exposed itself in the northwest. A cavalry officer warned that leaving the central region would stretch them dangerously far from Jiangwei. Rage overruled caution, because Henry continued broadcasting jokes about Wang Ho chasing him across the continent. The bully mounted his giant wolf and led the elite rapid response force northwest at full speed. Henry remained barely visible ahead, disappearing through forks, groves, and prepared routes whenever cavalry closed. He posted updates describing the pursuit as a romantic journey between 2 exhausted men. Each insult pulled Wang Ho farther from Uobo, his main camp, and every useful reinforcement route. An hour passed, then another. While the cavalry chased us through terrain Henry had already mapped, Wang Ho's officers requested withdrawal, but he threatened anyone suggesting the target might escape. The elite force that could have decided the central battle became trapped by its commander's wounded pride. Meanwhile, Jiangwei launched the assault on Uobo with the larger but weaker mixed army. Wooden palisades shattered quickly, forcing defenders into brutal fighting between houses and narrow streets. Uobo's musketeers fired from cover, while spearmen traded ground doorway by doorway against overwhelming numbers. Coarse vassals attacked cautiously, unwilling to die for another lord's punishment campaign. Jiangwei watched progress slow and ordered executions for anyone holding back. Even with fear behind them, the attackers spent more than 300 casualties approaching the mansion district. Uobo's sword arm shook from exhaustion, yet he refused to abandon the territory that kept his people alive. Jiangwei finally revealed 12 Tier 3 armored beasts hidden behind the main formation. The enormous creatures advanced like living tanks, their dark green shells deflecting musket fire with minimal damage. One armored beast demolished a street barricade and threw defenders through the air. A wide breach opened in Uobo's last line, and despair moved across the exhausted defenders. Uobo remembered choosing a custom technology tree filled with useful machines, but almost no high-tier recruitment. That decision had limited his combat growth, and now Tier 3 enemies stood inside his territory. A wounded spearman urged retreat, but Uobo answered that losing the mansion meant death regardless. He raised his sword and ordered everyone to fight beside him until the final defense collapsed. Then black shapes appeared on the western horizon and rapidly became ranks of centaur spearmen and archers. Gangjin arrived at full speed, striking Jiangwei's chaotic rear before commanders could reform it. Tier 3 air elementals descended from the east moments later, cutting retreat routes and scattering vassal troops. Attackers already reluctant to fight threw down weapons. Once they realized the battlefield had reversed, Jiangwei screamed for order, but his army had become trapped between Uobo's defenders and alliance reinforcements. That was only the first layer of Imom's plan. Rhythmic footsteps rolled over the northern hills as 3 gigantic earth elementals entered view. Rock pangolin shield guards followed in formation, shields joined into a moving wall. Boar riders waited behind them while longbow companies advanced with arrows already drawn. At the center rode Imom on a white frostwolf, watching the battlefield with complete focus. Jiangwei recognized the earth elementals from the failed fortress siege, and finally understood the operation. Uobo had never been abandoned. His territory was the point chosen to gather Wang Ho's scattered forces. Henry's northwest raid was not a desperate distraction, but a leash tied directly to Wang Ho's pride. The rapid response cavalry had been pulled away, and the slower siege army now stood exposed without rescue. Imom ordered the earth elementals toward the 12 armored beasts, rather than wasting arrows on their shells. The giants rooted into the ground and met the charging creatures with overwhelming mass. Rock pangolin guards moved beside them, preventing the armored beast from breaking toward Uobo's mansion. Gangjin's centaurs continued striking the rear, while air elementals cut through command groups from above. Longbows targeted execution squads and loyal officers, freeing coerced soldiers to surrender safely. Boar riders charged the first formation that attempted to reorganize around Jiangwei. The impact opened a deep gap, and Uobo's surviving defenders attacked through it from the opposite side. Jiangwei watched front, rear, and flanks collapse together, every route closed by a different alliance force. The army he believed would punish betrayal had become the sacrifice inside Imom's encirclement. Far northwest, Wang Ho still chased Henry and had no idea his central strength was being dismantled. Every mile he traveled made the rescue slower and the trap around Jiangwei tighter. Imom did not celebrate early, ordering discipline, pressure, and mercy for troops abandoning weapons. The policy accelerated collapse because frightened vassals now had a reason to stop dying. Armored beasts remained dangerous, but earth elementals and shield guards prevented them from reaching vulnerable troops. Snow Song froze their legs, and concentrated arrows struck joints exposed between shell plates. Uobo finally lowered his shaking sword for one breath, realizing help had arrived before the mansion fell. Gangjin called across the field that the heavenly wolf dogs had entered the wrong hunting ground. Imom ignored the insult and continued directing formations, keeping revenge from disrupting the operation. His army had left its walls, yet every defensive lesson traveled with it through shields, control, spacing, and timing. The same cautious talent once mocked as passive now shaped the entire region's most aggressive counterattack. Half-cost walls had bought time, and that time had produced minds, heroes, allies, technology, and trust. Wang Ho believed strength meant forcing everyone into one charge behind his banner. Improved strength could mean giving different people a position where their abilities mattered. The orphan who began with 10 peasants now commanded a coalition, without demanding anyone become his servant. Snow Song, Gangjin, Uobo, Henry, and the strange mixed army all fought because survival connected their choices. Behind them stood territories that remained independent precisely because Imom's fortress had refused to fall. Jiang Wei's force continued collapsing, and the system filled with surrender notices instead of victory announcements for Wang Ho. The bully's empire still looked enormous on a map, but its command structure had already broken under coordinated pressure. His finest cavalry chased an enemy designed to escape, while his siege army fought opponents designed to surround it. The Heavenly Wolf Alliance had entered the day believing it controlled every battlefield. By afternoon, every important movement followed a path Imom had predicted before the armies left camp. That reversal mattered more than any single duel or dramatic personal strike. Imom never became the strongest warrior, and he never needed to become one. He built structures that protected lives, systems that turned losses into resources, and plans that denied stronger enemies their advantages. Every wall represented wood and stone saved through Impregnable Fortress, but also hours purchased for people behind it. Those hours became trained militia, growing wolves, loyal tribes, advanced towers, and alliances formed without coercion. Wang Ho laughed because defense looked worthless before danger arrived. Once danger arrived, his cavalry found gravity, frost, traps, shields, stone giants, and disciplined fire waiting together. The army meant to prove Imom weak instead proved exactly why his talent was terrifying. His walls did not merely survive attacks, they changed who held power across the entire region. The orphan nobody had become the one lord frightened survivors could stand behind, without surrendering themselves. Wang Ho had promised to break a turtle shell, and discovered a fortress capable of breaking armies instead. By the source's final battlefield, the former hunter was chasing bait while his own alliance became calculated prey. Imom's victory was already written in the walls, because preparation had turned ridicule into protection and protection into power.